All right. So, morning, Gary.
Morning, Vin. How are we doing?
I'm great, man. Good to have you on.
Great to be on.
I know I've seen you written several books,
hmm
and we can't get into all of the books today. But there's one interesting one that I see, I think, on pressing. That's an interesting topic for a lot of coaches. A lot of coaches just talk about pressing, but they use the word, I should say, they use the word pressing.
Yeah.
If you listen to a coach in a game, and all from their mouth is, oh, press, press, press.
Mm.
And I'm saying, oftentimes I ask coaches, have you ever trained your team to press, and how? What's the methodology in pressing? So this is one of the areas I wanted to look at first, because one of your things I was reading up in one of your profiles, right? And the addressing the certain areas that coaches should must pay attention to when you're developing a successful pressing game. Take it from there for me, Gary, on that.
Yeah. So first off, I would completely agree with you. It's probably the inspiration behind the book was I felt that pressing was being looked at in a really superficial, general way. That people were just yelling it from the sideline. But what I was kind of most, I suppose, frustrated with was when I was watching a lot of games over here at youth college, even pro, was I felt we were a bit reluctant to press, especially at the youth level when there's no real risk and stakes there. I thought why we were reluctant to do it in talking to coaches were that you would normally hear that this well, we're not fit enough to press. We're not, and that's
Right.
I kind of want to go down a road where I wanted to link it all together, where pressing has more to do with, yes, there's a physical component, but I believe the most important component is the intelligence, the understanding of when to go, the understanding of angles, the understanding of individual roles, responsibilities, and then alongside that, the integration of culture. Like, can you be an aggressive pressing team without having this environment? And I think that's what football has shown us today. That I don't think that's possible. I don't think you can have even like Simeone's team aren't naturally a pressing team, but they use their culture to be defensively very, very strong. Klopp uses his culture to
Klopp,
be
yeah,
aggressive.
Klopp, yes.
Pep's a culture guy. He, and that's where. So out of it, I wanted to get coaches to look at, some different practitioners. I definitely wasn't saying that I was the pressing king. If anything, I felt like some of my methods in the past, what I wanted to address in the book, held me back, and I wanted to share that. So I wanted to get away from, hey, if we can't be successful in a really aggressive system, and we just don't have the players to do it. No, you can train it, you can get better at it, but that involves you as well as a coach.
Right, definitely. As I said, one interesting part of that, what you just said, is about the angles, because like for instance, if a curved run can assist with closing down that player and keeping them on one side of the field, but that's not. I've realized that a lot of times you find, especially attacker, the forwards,
Mm.
they'll be running towards the ball, and then they stop and look around, and there's no support for him. And it shows me that was never trained. Yeah, that would be your take on that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the detail, right? Like if you're at the first floor in the lobby and everything is press, press, work, 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 then you'll never get to the second or third floor where you get more detail, you get more nuances, and you get that. To be fair, the coaching community is progressing now. You hear the language of a common language, and you hear a language now of detail and depth. I think it goes as long as you want it to go. But I think that, yeah, I mean, there's again, like I would say, Simeone is a coach that is probably the best defensive coach in the world, and it's not really hard to find exercises and drills that show the detail that he's
Right.
there's a clip. I think it's the new young Portuguese signing where he's literally at the top level, a yard, half a yard, getting you right. That body shape, you get that wrong, and the whole system crumbles. So again, if you go back to that, all right. So if that's not mastered, whose fault is that? And yeah, like I think we would all agree. If you sat 20 coaches in the room, I think probably 18, 19 of them would agree that the coach can impact that there with the work they do during the week. And then if the player isn't listening to you, I still think that the coach can impact that. I still think that the coach can say, right, well, is there ways to get this player on board? Because I think pressing is it's the ultimate team system. For like Pep Guardiola's possession system is the ultimate system in possession. Pressing is the ultimate system out of possession. Because if one person doesn't do their work for the team, you're done. So that's the detail. So like you're right. And I think that then I think the road to go down that of coaching that is where it's enjoyable. Like we want to coach detail. But in order for us to get to detail, we have to embrace that there is a certain part of it that we have to stagger or tier our learning towards it, rather than just say it's fitness, it's running, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And I want to discuss, because you are saying that there are certain areas that coaches must address. But I want to ask you one thing, because I see a lot of times we are pressing, the team is pressing. But what do you think about closing the passing lanes? Closing down the passing lane, isn't that important in the overall pressing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's, I think that's then working in teams within teams, then working on second and third players that are, if one's going to the ball, two are. I learned more of it actually at the professional level because there were players who were more conditioned to block the passing lane, and I would have been more conditioned to take the risk. So in my conversation with those players, I'd be like, hey, take the risk, go, you'll force a mistake. They would say, you can see what the pass is going. You can, so their perspective was different. And it was, to be honest, like I changed, I shifted quite a bit. I still, like at most levels, I still think if you pressure, you either force backwards or you force a mistake. And against a top player, they'll break it. But against a lot of players, even at the top level, they struggle with it. So, yeah, the passing lanes are very, very important. And again, if you're pressing, I think the idea of pressing is compressing space, and the more numbers you can get around that space, then the easier it is to manipulate and control that space. But I mean, it is to a certain extent common sense. If you're trying, like in Cruyff is the great phrase of make the field as big as possible in possession, make it small out of possession, and But you're right. To make it a small out of possession, you have to control outlets, and those outlets can be passing lanes, and those are again the intricacies of pressing. Like the better the opposition, the better chance they have of manipulating that and breaking it, and that's where the game becomes. And maybe that's at the top level where I don't think we see pressing as much over the last 5 years, and I think a lot of it is because the players are at the top level. Man City players are now passing into pressure, whereas 10 years ago, we were taught to pass, keep away from pressure. And now players are playing into it because Silva's, De Bruyne's, they can break it and go. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's a fact. Normally you're taught to make a safe pass, but they're actually passing into pressure, to be honest with you.
Well, that's to me, that's the next level, and it's not the next level. A lot of teams are there are gone beyond that already. I think that's where you're teaching players to get to, especially centre backs, where we have the tactics board and we have the two magnets and we tell them to pass. But at the end of the day, with more teams not pressing and more teams dropping back, now those teams are going to say, right, well, you can pass back and forth to two centre backs. And I actually just posted a blog on it today on my website to be, well, let's look at actually encouraging centre backs to go to pressure, because when you go to pressure now against a medium block, you're now initiating more decisions, and I think that's where again, Vin, my honest opinion is if you expose a team to more decisions, you actually have a better chance of exposing space. If you expose them to more running, I mean, is that really the answer? Like, that could go either way, but decisions are, then you're exposing maybe that detail. If you're just whacking the ball up and down the pitch and saying run, 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 you're not exposing them to decisions. You're just exposing them to chaos, and anyone can win at that stage. So I think that's the beauty of the game, to where, I mean, Guardiola has mastered it 10, 15 years ago. The rest of us are just trying to play catch up, it looks, at this stage, where you're just trying to manipulate that space in and out of possession.
I agree. What I want to speak to something for me. I think a lot of coaches get carried away with there must be a trigger as to when you're going to press. And maybe when the attacker goes, maybe that's the time for you to go. But I'm just using that scenario. But what are some of the things? What's the approach should coaches take when they're training that a pressing approach? Let's use the approach for the time being. But what is it that something that should be looking for? Because I know that the Barcelona doesn't, as long as they lose the ball, they're gone. And if you're not careful, you can get caught, with space behind you. But I think I want now to address this in particular for coaches who have no idea, and with no disrespect to the coaches, but they talk about pressing and pressing and pressing, and there's no signal. Let me call it a trigger to say, okay, this is where we press. So that's part of the approach by the coach, and the culture is there. Well, Liverpool right now has developed a culture. Man City, same with Guardiola. Simeone, to me, what he did against Liverpool last week, I think, was it last week? Yeah. What he did against Liverpool, sitting back, but they're not allowing him to play, and the result was evident.
On that, I would say not allowing them to play. This little detail that, again, Liverpool should have won the game. Liverpool created chances.
That's right.
But there's a big difference in how Simeone absorbs pressure and how Mourinho absorbs pressure.
Right.
And to me, Mourinho absorbs it in shape and structure, but Simeone still absorbs pressure with a certain amount of he pressures service. Nobody stands, everyone works, and so I still think there's a certain amount of aggression in that block.
Yes,
maybe in that, and that's where I think. That's another conversation. Is does a block, if you play a low block and you tell yourself to invite pressure, it's very then difficult. If you're a boxer and you're going to sit on the ropes for a fight, very, very difficult then to get a punch in, because it contradicts your movements to be like, all right, well, and then you can almost be false sense of security. Well, we're okay. Well, we're okay. We're okay. Well, if someone strikes the ball for 25 yards, you need pressure.
Yeah.
But go back to your initial question. I think where coaches fall into a trap is that they only have the one trigger, and the one trigger is when the goalkeeper has the ball. And the problem with that is that if you get your distances and angles wrong and your timing wrong, and you press when the goalkeeper has it, and you connect to your centre backs, then the goalkeeper sees pressure and he knocks the ball 60 yards up the pitch.
Right.
So you're done. So there needs to be the detail there. But I think the problem with that is the goalkeeper only kicks the ball out 6-7 times a half. So you're not going to get a return on those pressing opportunities for that. So going back to what we talked about initially with the detail, was that the more triggers you have, then the more opportunities that you might get to take advantage or get a return on your pressing. I think the two centre backs in possession, I think the the forward to initiate that pressure. Whether it's a 1 forward or 2 forward, I think that's almost the easiest way to coach to get a knock-on effect. I think fullbacks in possession, again, Simeone's mastered it with that the wide pressure and using the touchline as a defender. But it is interesting what you're saying is that you said there about Barcelona just go, go, go. And I do think there's a sweet spot where if you have, I've had coaches, I've seen presentations where coaches have had 17, 18 pressing triggers. And one is a bouncing ball and the other is a backwards pass. And I'm thinking like, it looks brilliant on a PowerPoint, but you get on that pitch and you're
different.
Like, oh, it's different story. Hey, remember too. And that's not disrespect. So that there is like anything, there's a balance between getting the clarity. You can go too many, or you can only have one, and you can have too little. So it's about understanding that with your players.
Yes, I agree to that. I'm going to go through some points that I've seen you outline when you were describing in the preamble for your book, Pressing. And I take this opportunity to let my listeners know that that Gary has written a book, several books, but the one we're discussing now that we're referring to and taking some pieces from is the book on pressing. And if you all go to Modern Soccer Coach, that's the site that Gary founded, and it's very, very, very interesting. You can get all your books there, but in particular we're discussing pressing. But so let's look at a point that you mentioned in one of your preambles of player models. I'm going to go and just give me an overview of what it is, and then we will I just have a little discussion around them. When you mention player models, explain that out to my listeners. You said part of it is player models. That.
Yeah. So I mean, the initial stage of coach education at the minute, where it seems to be going, is philosophy is a big part of it. But I think alongside philosophy is that I spoke to a group yesterday about philosophy and game models, and the problem with philosophy and game models is that it's very much collective based. So the game of the 4 moments of the game are all, they're pretty generic. Like you either have choices, but all the choices involves the team, and the team is important. But let's go back to detail, and the detail is about impacting individuals. So, if you're a coach at the professional level, even at that level, I think we're starting to see a little shift. I think we're starting to see coaches that are creating better players. Like Guardiola's made Sterling better, things like that. But are we then looking at what we want from each position, what we need from each position? And if it's a case of I get to recruit my players or buy my players, then I think that's another thing. Like Liverpool's no secret. Liverpool's recruitment has been second to none.
Spot on, yeah.
Spot on. And and Manchester City's recruitment has been spot on. And there's no secret at all that Manchester United's recruitment over the last 5 years has been
don't agree, huh?
Yeah. So but alongside that, if you're a coach that's saying, all right, well, Gary, I'm a high school coach, or Gary, I'm a club coach, I don't have a checkbook, nor can I have a pool of players to choose from. Okay, well then, can you create profiles initially and then look to meet the player at least halfway there to say, all right, well, Johnny or Susie is a left-sided forward. In order for us to play a certain game, what do we need from that position? And yeah, we need certain amounts of. There are physical attributes, but the physical attributes are different from a centre back, and I think that's something that the amount of sprints that player is going to have to make, and then can you look then and say, all right, well, again, you said it before about angles. The angles of pressure of a left forward are going to be different from the angles of pressure from a right forward. So are you training that? And that's where we've done a chapter in the book where, again, coaches have different amounts of time, the luxury of time. Some have more than others. But if you want to break this down and really get stuck in, then, maybe you take 2 centre backs and you take them for 20 minutes after a training session. Well, kicking the ball 20 yards back and forth to each other, is not going to do it. And you want to So you want to make every moment count. So you want to make it
Right.
realistic to your model. And I think scaling back or even going up a second, third, fourth floor, the analogy I would always use is like, yeah, it's levels. And if you want to get better, you got to get to the next level. And I think level, again, chapter 3 or 4 was about positions. And I think that's one of the levels you have to, again, to go back, you look at Bielsa and you look at, he does a lot of work on micro moments of the game with those positions. And we can say it's unopposed, we can say it's unrelated, and I've been in professional environments and it works. Like when the players are comfortable doing work that they see value in on a Saturday,
right.
You know, they do it. And if it gets them 10% more comfortable, more confident, and for me, it's worth doing. So it's up to the coach, but I think it's something that it would be healthy if they considered.
But critical to that player model or the game model are the roles and responsibilities of each player. That's basically what it comes down to, though. If you give them their roles or what they're expected to do when we're pressing, that is critical to that model.
Yeah. I mean that's the clarity of. I suppose you have to identify that initially. Of for example, then when you're pressing, I think the biggest question is one of the biggest questions is, are you going to show inside or outside at that wide forward? Are they going to? And that's something that, again, like it could be a 5-part podcast on the pros and cons, but at the end of the day, it's personal. You might want them inside, I might want them outside.
Right.
That's fine. But I think in your environment, you need the clarity of that structure, and then all of a sudden you need to then do work beyond that structure. I do think then where science has a big role, and I think where science has a bigger role than what it's doing at the minute, is not counting GPS units and putting them up on a spreadsheet at the end of the week for nobody to look at. I think it's for the sports science department to see what the demands are for each position and for the demands are for each player and work around that. Could that be a starting point as opposed to, hey, Barcelona got into this red zone and that's where we need to get to? Like, I don't see that relevancy in other teams, but that's just me being critical.
Yeah, and it comes down. It comes down to the player profiles too, as you mentioned that before, because I find that a lot of times we hear, as I started out at the beginning, that coaches keep saying press, but you're not seeing a system around that pressing, right?
Yeah, and that's where I would even say that I have a chapter in the book on. I have a little bit on Klopp, I have a little bit on Rodgers, I have a little bit on Anthony Dorrans. And what I wanted to do there was not to say copy their models, but I wanted to give a little bit of depth in the type of people that they are. Because to your point, when someone says, when you have a coach on the sideline shouting press, or 6 seconds,
right?
They think that, like, they've got that rationally, like they've heard that Pep does that or Klopp does that, and they see him on a Saturday doing that. But I said to a group of coaches yesterday in a workshop, I'm like, we've only got, like, I've done some coach education with modern soccer coach. I've written I am looking under every rock for every amount of information. And then I think I can only get like 5% of what Liverpool do. So if that surface level is 5%, then there's way beyond, like, standing on the sign on the mountain. Don't copy that.
I agree. That is something that I find a lot of young coaches and inexperienced coaches, and maybe experienced coaches too, I don't know. But I'm speaking from where in the culture I'm used to, is that we coach on the ball, but the players away from the ball. In the pressing, I think that's important. The player away from the ball. What is your take on that?
Yeah, 100%. And it's a really interesting point, Ben, because when we're coaching the player on the ball, we're also coaching from 20 yards average plus with a distance. So it's Marion Spacey, a coach with Southampton in England, I had a video that I thought this was a great point. She was coaching it with a group of coaches on a pitch, and she was all mic'd up, and she said that she likened it to when the ball goes over you're standing watching a game and you think that the ball's going in the back of the net on TV, and the crowd are like, oh, after. Yeah. But then whenever you see the replay, you realize that it was nowhere near it.
20 yards away.
Like, but hey, but we don't take the same approach whenever we coach pressing or we coach something where a yard is a difference, and we're like, hey, you could have got there, and the player has to say yes, or else they're going to get taken off. So I think to help that there, I think video is so important for the coach to go back and say, and this is what I've learned over the last 5 years, is what I experience on a Saturday or a Wednesday is so emotionally driven that when I go back and watch it, it can almost be a different game. So when I go back and connect with that player, I have to have empathy that they're playing in a game that maybe I'm not seeing an accurate representation of. So, when we're watching and getting these pictures and making our assessments, we have to make sure that there's accuracy and detail in these assessments. And I think video is really, really important to do that. So, yeah.
We'll just take a quick break here. Thank you so much for watching the content at Modern Soccer Coach. If you would like to support what we're doing and help us provide more free coaching education with the webinars and the podcast and everything else, please take a look at this offer that we have from the webinars over the summer. Coaches can now download every single webinar tactical presentation that we did from the lockdown period over the summer. Just over $1 per webinar. You can personally download all 25 webinars that will be yours to keep. Each webinar is over 1 hour long and features a detailed presentation followed by live Q&A with the coaches in attendance. We cover topics such as youth and elite player development, sports science, tactical analysis, match preparation, goalkeeper pressing, and other key specific areas. We had coaches such as Jesse Marsh, Nolan Sheldon, Ivan Baregi, Adine Osman-Basic, Oliver Gage, Jonas Munkfall, Kat Smith, John Wall, and many more. modernsoccercoach.com/shop. You can go there, get yours now, support Modern Soccer Coach, help us provide free content with our webinars and podcasts throughout the year. Thank you.
You made a valid point there about the distance between the pressing player, and the player on the ball. I never really thought about it that way from a coaching perspective, from that distance, because it's true. From where you're standing, the perspective looks a little bit shorter, and so it's important that as long as we coach, I'm going to use principle just for the want of a word right now of pressing. I think what I see challenging is that players will make a run straight to the player and give him an option to go either side of him, instead of looking where the ball is and then make a curved run, close him down. You don't have to get close to him. So I think that initial run is important.
Yeah. The levels of, or it's looking at pressing actions on a spectrum rather than as a binary. You did or you didn't. And
right.
And we see on one end of the spectrum, you've got the charge and then a touch either side and you're beaten and you're out of the game. And then on the other side, you've got the player who just doesn't go at all. But in the middle, it's where you need to get to impact. And I think that's what I've written in the book. As a coach, you have to define what you perceive as pressure. So for me, what I would perceive as pressure, and this is what I would say on the first day, those non-negotiables, like on the first day of training, I'm not going to waste 45 minutes doing a 1v1 exercise. You can identify it in 2 minutes. You can say, listen, everyone, this is what when I say pressure, it is touch tight, and this is the body shape I'm looking for the opposition. It's close enough that they put their head down.
Yeah.
Why do we want their head down? We want to remove the visuals that they can make a decision. So now once the head goes down, and then now this is what we're looking for. And once the step goes negative, now that's when we can make an aggressive tackle. If you're coming in, then you can build in the principles towards that into game-based training rather than, again, like I've written a fair bit over the last 6 months, 1v1 training with no context of positions on the pitch or people is mindless. Like it's not enough detail. It may be good for 5 to 6 year olds, not for 16-year-olds.
Because you have the person with the ball has no options, and that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, there's no decision. Like
no decision, right?
Stop the player. And you're like, it actually favors the defender because someone's doing, and it baffles me because a lot of teams put out first day of preseason. They'll put out a little video, and I'm all over it because I want to see what people are doing. But it actually, like, it baffles me that you would do. The coach is saying, it's about our detail. It's 1v1, and we got to get our detail right. And then walks away saying, "Oh, what do you think of the session, coach? Yeah, our defending was really good today." And you're like, what chance did the forward get?
That's right.
But again, Vin, that's where we need, as a coaching, and we're getting better. But as a coaching community, we need to have higher standards in our detail because we like throwing it around and saying to our players that we need to be detailed. But if that's going to be the case, the same applies to us. We have to design sessions that are consistent with or complement how we want to play. And again, similar to, do you show them inside or outside? Your sessions should be somewhat different from my sessions because you have a different philosophy, and that's fine. I think that's the way it goes around. But I think there's a right or wrong way, and like the detail that you can get to, I think that's where the fun is.
Right. There's certain things you pay attention to. And that's why I come to a point now where we are pressing, right? We are pressing. What are some of the, and I think the mistake that coaches make, they coach pressing, this aggressive pressing. But what are some of the safeguards you take now? When you're pressing, what are some of the things you should safeguard against? When you're pressing now, because it's game related now. It's game related now. So when you are pressing, what are the things that we should be cognizant of when we're pressing? Okay.
The biggest one for me is actually how the moments interact with one another. So how your attacking organization. So if you're a direct team, and say it goes from, the goalkeeper bounces the ball 3 times and smacks it up the field 60, 70 yards, and you ask your centre forward to press, and then you ask everyone else to go. Well, that ball is, you've actually lost control of that ball, and you haven't moved your team up the pitch, so you're not in a good position initially to press, and then you're on the front foot going forward. Like, you're going to get hit with space in behind. So again, I think it's Juan Marillo says that the quicker it goes forward, the quicker it goes back. So if you're going to press, understand how the different moments relate to one another. Right. And I think as well, are you going to press? I think we're now at a time where the new goalkeeper rule is with the passing has changed. So we're now at a time where you're not going to press for 90 minutes, because as much as you want to be a pressing team, if you're 2-0 up with 10 minutes to go, then it would be, it may not be the smartest move. So can you be adaptable and flexible in your systems? How many defensive systems have you? How do you communicate them? How much do the players understand them? And I think we talk a lot about flexibility in the attacking side of the ball. And I think it has a real relevance on the defensive side of the ball as well. So it's like, you don't want to generalize it, and you don't want to go too much to where your players only have basically one thing. Like Barcelona can defend in a low block. They're Barcelona. And
exactly.
Your team might need to do it as well. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's just a case of being open and asking yourself questions. And again, I think it's a healthy habit for a coach to build, is that, that the coach helps to solve the problems with the players, not to say that, I'm going to bring in a fitness coach, or I'm going to do 2 fitness sessions a week, we'll be able to press, because that's not going to work, because that, again, back to the detail, that's not going to happen. So again, it's zooming out and kind of taking all these different contexts into place. If your team can't stand each other, they're not going to work for one another. And how much of pressing revolves, if it's a lone forward in a 4-3-3 and it's against a back four, that centre forward is not going to win the ball. That centre forward's job is to dictate the play. So they're helping somebody else become successful. Well, if the centre forward and the number 11 or the number 7 can't stand each other, is that going to work?
No support.
And as well, like it's, I think something that we don't look at is that we see it from, and I've even talked a lot of it on this podcast, is we talk a lot of it about front players pressing. It's a front player. It's so much on the front player. But if those defenders aren't used or aren't confident in space in behind, and those defenders aren't used to defending, like every defender can defend a goal, no problem. But I think to press, you need them to defend the halfway line. Like you need them to be comfortable enough with space in behind. So you need defenders that are brave in possession now in the game, and you need defenders who are brave out of possession if you want to press.
Exactly. And also there's a point I want to come to just now. Oh yeah, when you were talking, we came back to the runs that the forward make. That 4, even 3 defenders with 1 forward and trying to press, he'll never win the ball for sure. And you made a point which I think we want to see again, that coaches will understand, is the role of the lone attacker is to influence where the play goes. So then we can press in that area. So he has to get the player to play. The goalkeeper is one of the examples. When they're running to the goalkeeper, they never study what leg the goalkeeper uses, his dominant leg, right, foot, and so they're running to his strong side, and you want to channel him away in an area where it's predictable.
Yeah,
that's part of the approach, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And as
know
much,
that. Yeah. Go ahead.
As much as, again, you're taking away, you're now dictating in both of those situations. You're now dictating. So even though you don't have control of the ball, you potentially have control of the game, because you're dictating where the ball will go. Your pressure areas,
Yeah. All right. In all of this, I see you have, what does scouting has to do with pressing? What does it have? You're saying a scouting system. So you have a pressing game, and I want you to explain why that is important.
When you're scouting?
No, it's part of your pressing is just scouting. Does it mean that you're looking at a team? Are there a team that you should press your inferior team? So you can always press. Are you going to press a Barcelona? As well as you'd press another team.
Yeah.
So what is that scouting relating to that? You're discussing?
Yeah. I think with players, again, is with the book we wanted to challenge was like it's a game of intelligence, it's a game of decisions. So it's a game of information. As a coach, to get that information across, and the more information you have, the more information will be relevant to helping your team. And I think, again, the amount of decisions on a Saturday, and again, you can do it and I'm sure if a team plays a back 3, it's going to be a different pressing system to two centre backs or a back 4, or if it's a 4-2-3-1, are they building with 2 holders? How are you gonna? And these aren't something that I don't think it's something that you necessarily, as a youth coach or a high school coach, you need to get bogged down with. But I do think that, again, back to that flexibility, is that you do have to have players who understand where the problems are. And again, it's easy for me to say, listen, defenders need to be comfortable up at the halfway line. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if there's two flying forward that are looking to get up the rollers, they might not be as comfortable. So yeah, it's I think the higher the levels, I think, again, back to the recruitment side, I think the more in Liverpool, like, again, even I experienced it at Red Stars, was the more information that you can give the players prior to the team on the build, then that's usually a pretty good, like, they want that information because they want to know how it's going to feel. And again, with teams being more flexible in the build, now that they might have a back four, but the six might drop in and it becomes a three every now and again. And but it doesn't happen all the time. So what do we do if it doesn't? And and I think even with the flexibility of a six dropping in between fullback and centre back, what happens then? What if teams are going to overload one side? How do we react to that? So yeah, I think a coach can really help themselves by doing some homework if they can. If not, then maybe it's a case of, listen, we know how to press against a back four, a back three, 4-4-2, 4, whatever it is. It might just be a coach calling it, or it might even be a coach empowering the players to do it, which would be a great social experiment to say, listen, then, Johnny, what do we do? You'd have to have a lot of confidence in your players, but it'd be fun one.
Yes. The one area, the scouting can also isolate a player who has to take 2-3 touches of the ball. Now we're talking to the lower level now, and so you can say, okay, when this player gets the ball, he's gonna take 2-3 touches before he can move the ball. So that's the trigger. You induce a pass to him, to that player or her, and then that's the time I want you to press, because he's gonna panic.
Yes.
So I think that's coming with the scouting too. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, no one who's, again, the detail there is like, okay, there's collective scouting on the opposition teams, and then there's the individuals, there's the profile. And yeah, I would say if you're going to do it, like you said there, it's information like that that's important. I would try and be as clear as possible, but also, like, don't generalize such and such is good, or such and such has a great left foot, or little tendencies, just a little thing, because we've all played the game and nobody plays it with they're quick, they're fast. There's only one thing for mind, really, sometimes.
I understand. All right, let me just touch a couple of the points, and 2 points in one, really. The philosophy of the coach, right, will influence the culture. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying it's very important that he builds a philosophy, right? This is my approach to the game.
Or she builds the philosophy.
Or she, yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with it, because you can definitely see that Klopp, whether he continues next year like that is another thing. If he's going to continue with his approach to pressing and winning back the ball right away, Pep Guardiola has a definite system that he uses. It's from every club that he goes to. You can see that, right? So we have to safeguard against when we press. Where do we press? Is that some of the things that the coaches should look for? When, where, and why? If I can break it down like that.
Yeah, and I think, again, not only has Klopp got a philosophy, but I think the consistency across the board. I interviewed the throw-in coach last week for my podcast. The way he talked about Liverpool and their environment was, that they're good people, that it's collaborative, that you could almost describe a pressing system. It's collaborative. People care about one another. People work hard. There's high standards. So I think what Klopp and what Pep have done off the pitch as leaders, I think probably doesn't get enough credit, with the fact that they are managing. Like, there's a picture of the Community Shield with Guardiola with 20. I counted 28 staff members. and there's no people kind of squeeze into the picture. So like, forget about Aguero and forget about De Bruyne. Talk about egos. Like, I would say out of 28 practitioners, there must be 25 of them would have big egos because they're the best in their area.
Yes.
So you not only have to communicate with top players, you also have to communicate with the top staff members who all want the weights train. The S&C coach wants them in the gym. The video coach wants them in the meetings. You know, the possession coach wants them out. So they all want different things. And I think the consistency of a leader to say, hey, we do it this way, but also to be collaborative enough to get everyone on board is the difference, I think, in a coach who's maybe stuck in the times that say, oh yeah, it's my way, but they're walking on the, is it saying like a lonely walk? The difference, they're taking a walk, whereas Klopp is leading people.
Yeah, I can't let you get away with that. With I just heard this just now, and I've never. Be honest with you, in all my years, I've never heard of this one. You see, the throw-in coach. That's what you said?
Yeah.
He concentrates on throw-ins.
Oh, like this is you gotta let this guy's amazing. So this guy's from Denmark, and basically in the podcast he's got the story is that Liverpool were the second worst team in the Premier League at throw-ins. And throw-ins isn't just like, did they not score from them? No, they turned over possession, the second most in the Premier League from throw-ins. He's worked with them for 2 years or maybe 3 years, and they're now the third best team in Europe in throw-ins, and that's retention and goals. And but then again, you listen to him, Vin, and you're like, you know, the way he talks, it makes you go, aha. People, and that's the thing for being. How humble does Klopp have to be? How open-minded does Klopp have to be?
Yes.
And not only did he interview him, he hired him on the first day. He started on the first day. So he's like, you're going to start right away.
He was super impressed then.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's pretty inspiring that again, I think creativity and innovation are hard to get into the game because, you know, we've all played it and we all feel it. So sometimes to a certain degree, we all think we're humble, but to a certain degree that we all know it all. So to be different and to take new ideas on, not just to listen to them, but take them into our environment and say, you know what? I'm going to change something to bring that person in. That's how much I believe. And I think that's a great message for young coaches who would read the book on it and say it's great, but may not change their daily processes. And I think the change is where the gold is.
And I think that those examples set a standard that I think we should. Oftentimes, we say we don't have the resources, the smaller clubs, to get these people in place. But I believe that it's a level that we should try to even implement. We won't have 28 staff members for sure, but in the areas we have to get now into the attacking coach, the defensive coach. You know, the throwing coach. To me, I never looked at it that way. To be honest with you, in all my years of coaching and doing, this is the first I'm hearing this, and I've learned something from this podcast today. I'm serious, and I'm not ashamed to say it. You know, because I've never heard of it. We might think about that it is in place, but I never look at it that way, because throw-ins. But when you say that they lost the ball from throw-ins, and that is serious, because I lost a game from a throw-in in a FIFA qualifying game with girls. We took a throw-in in our attacking third, pretty close to their 18-yard line, and the throw was given away, counter-attack, goal. So it resonates with me when you say that. Yeah, it resonates with me. All right, I'm going to wrap up now, but what I would like from you is to just go over some of the areas that you think coaches should address when they're developing successful pressing again. Let's go over those points to wrap up.
Yeah, I think your philosophy basically on like, do I want to do it? And I think it's a simple question, but like, do I understand the ins and outs of it? And yeah, it's a risk system. Like, am I comfortable with the space in behind? Am I comfortable that this is going to take, if I go down this road with my team, you might get bit on the backside for a few games. Like, you might lose a goal or two, in the same way that if you want to start building from the back, there's going to be a growth period where the mistakes are going to be made. And I think that's where you have to commit to it. And you also have to measure it. And that's something that we finished the book up with, is like, you can press really well and lose the game 4-0. And that can happen. Like, you can, and that's just soccer. You can press really badly and win a game 5-0.
Right.
So don't gauge it off the, have metrics in place, or have someone watch it, go back on video, and you're going to go down a road, be passionate about it, because if you're just doing it because Klopp or Pep does it or have done it, then the players aren't going to buy in, because there's going to come a time that you have to sell this thing. And if you're not strong and passionate in your convictions, because you're actually asking people to do more work, and you're actually asking people to work harder for one another, and it's 2020, that's not consistent with how we're built today. So you're going to have people that are like, not because they don't like you or they disrespect you, but you're going to have players saying like, I don't want to make that run. And you're going to have to say, this is why we do it, and this is why it's important to us. But if you're like, well, I'll get someone else who does, then that's not going to work either. So I think it's there's so much depth to it, but I think the first step is, have a read about it, think about what you want your team to look like, and then think, do I want to go down a road of fighting this here? Or would I rather go down a road of, possibly not being on the front foot defensively and conceding more goals? Because although you might lose, and this is where I say, I think in coach education, we should teach opportunity cost, because if we swap the other one out, it doesn't actually necessarily, it might mean less confrontation or less having to sell things. Right. We get closer to average. And then if we're closer to average, what's the point?
True. All right. Gary, it was really great talking to you.
Loved it, Ben.
I loved it. I must, before I even go further, I must encourage my listeners to go to your podcast, Modern Soccer Coach. That's what it's called, right? Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Yeah. Some excellent topics, some good conversation. And at the same time, visit Modern Soccer Coach's website. You can purchase books, all the books that Gary has written. And I don't know where you find the time, Gary, but yeah, but it's there. A lot of good information for coaches. All these things that we are talking about and we're just talking about, it's a tip of the iceberg. The book itself will give you coaching sessions that you can follow, and other advice that is very critical to develop your team as a pressing team, and not pressing team. Forget how you should organize when you want to press. I hate to use the word pressing team, the phrase. But once again, thanks, Gary. I mean, it was really, really informative. If I learned one thing today, it is about the throwing coach. I look forward to having more discussions with you in the near future. And it was my pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Vin. Loved it.